Hey family, welcome to How Love Works, where we talk about the principles for lasting love. Well, I think it's time for us to talk about something a little different this time. I think it's time for us to deal with a subject matter that's a little closer to my heart. I want to deal with the issue that has to do with the men. I know that we spent a couple of weeks, or several weeks actually, talking about the 7 deadly sins that cause women's relationships to end in epic failure. And I thought that was pretty educational and helped women, at least that was my hope, to try to give women information that would help them to try to manage their relationships a lot better. Today, I want to talk about a subject matter that has to do with men. I want to talk about men's greatest fear. Specifically black men, but men in general. I want to deal with an issue that most men, they kind of talk about it on a surface level and you hear about it a little bit, but they don't go into a lot of detail about it. There are a lot of areas in life that affect men that we really don't talk about much, especially with women. But there is one particular area that is very, very difficult for the average man to deal with. And that's the area is of respect. You always hear about men talking about it on the surface area. But what I want to share with you today is how men really feel about respect. One thing you need to understand when it comes to respect to a man, men see respect or interpret respect as love. A lot of women believe that by telling a man that they love him is really something that really ignites his soul. In a man's mind and in a man's heart, hearing the words, "I love you," as an adult male, it feels good, kind of. But the words that really, really captures his heart is, "I respect you. I think you're a good man. I really respect your mind. I really respect your judgment. I really trust you as a man." Those are the words that really grab a man's heart, that really gets him moving in his heart, that really bonds him. Because in the world of men, respect is the pinnacle of manhood. It's almost like how a woman feels if a man were to say something like this to a woman. It would crush her. If a man were to say something like this to a woman, "I really respect you, but I'm not loving you right now. I'm not really feel like I can love you anymore." That would crush most women. Most women would think that was the most insensitive thing you could ever say. But it's almost common for women to say things like, "I don't really respect you. I love you, but I don't really respect you." And for a man, that is just as devastating as the remark I made earlier. So the greatest fear that men have is not being respected. That's our greatest fear. And in a society that we live in today, which is a very gynocentric society, we live in a society right now where anything relative to masculinity is considered toxic. And we have a society now that's driven by manipulative, intoxicating, I would say gynocentric idiocy, just idiotic nonsense that's trying to take little boys even and trying to make them girls. And got man shaming, where a man can't even any longer defend his self, if he has some issues with some of the behavior that he's experiencing in personal relationships. It has gotten that bad. And so now men, every time we open up our mouths about what we think about an issue or our opinion about maybe something that a female is saying or a female is doing, and it may not even be critical, it's just an opinion. A lot of men are facing a lot of shame as a result from the culture because of the way we were trained. Now, I realize a lot of young boys, they have some misguided ideas of what disrespect is. A lot of young boys or men who have a young boy mentality, they think disrespect is just merely disagreeing with them. Some young men have the concept of disrespect is just not doing what they want, see, or having the same mindset or worldview. These are categories of disrespect for some of these young men, and that's so far removed from the reality. So the sad part about it is that no one really gives, even in church settings, no one really gives men, I'm talking about good brothers. I'm not talking about these so-called alpha male, beta males, omega males, manginas, whatever you want to call them. I'm not talking about those guys. Those guys are a dime a dozen. I'm talking about decent brothers who are looking for good relationships, lasting relationships, who want good commitments. I'm talking about those kinds of brothers who get dumped on. And so what we do is we kind of hold back our hearts, and we kind of refuse to get into any kind of intimacy with a woman because we are afraid of the male shaming that is so popular right now. Now, again, I'm not talking about these guys out here that's out here sleeping with females and dogging them and cussing them out and calling them names and every other word is be this and be that. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about decent brothers. I'm talking about brothers that really would love to have a relationship that's going to be lasting. Those brothers are petrified of losing their masculinity because the last thing a man wants is to be disrespected by a woman that he cares about or a woman that he wants a relationship with. That's the last thing that brother wants. So that's his greatest fear. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of brothers, they just decide, well, look, I can't. Most brothers kind of see it this way, and I'm going to say it like this. I don't mean to offend anybody, but I'm just going to be a spokesperson or advocate right now for the average brother. Since we are so sensitive to maintaining our level of respect because it is intrinsically related to our personhood, our identity. And so when we think that it's a possibility, a likelihood that our respect level or our respect for ourselves is going to be stepped on by a female or by a relationship that we might enter into, the fear is ultimately what is just overwhelming. So what we'll do is we'll keep our distance. But see, what it does, it causes all kinds of issues in that man. See, because a lot of brothers, we want that intimacy. We want that connectedness. We want that relationship. But the fear is so great. It's paralyzing sometimes. And so we, in a sense, we almost put on an act. We become an actor and act like everything's good and nothing affects us. But many times brothers are very lonely out here. It's a lot of lonely brothers out here because they already know they can't win with most women. They know they can't win. They can't meet the incessant, unrealistic expectations that many women have. They can't win. They can't win that one. They can't deal with the criticism that comes from some. They can't deal with the I'd say the adolescent romantic notions that some women have, that they develop from television and magazines and Ebony and all of the romantic books that they've read growing up. They can't have an adult conversation with somebody who is more than willing to be accountable for for their actions, their attitudes and affections. And so now you have groups who have sprung up to protect themselves. They pretty much have separated themselves from any kind of meaningful, fulfilling relationship that they could have with women because of the fear of being disrespected. That is a monster issue with men. And it's sad that a lot of women don't understand how powerful that issue is for us. Because there's books that are written on the issue of respect when it comes to men. And I remember reading a book called Love and Respect. And they had a chapter in there having to do with the crazy cycle. This had to do with men, if they're respected, then they become less loving. And then when women are not being loved, or they experience not feeling love, then they become disrespectful. And it's just a cycle, and it just goes on and on and on. And that's what you're seeing in the culture. That's what you're seeing in the African American community between the black man and the black woman. It's just this constant cycle where women are not feeling love, so they become disrespectful. Men are not being respected, so they're not giving away love. They're not being as loving as they could. And that's what's going on in our communities today. And all I'm saying is there's only one way to kind of fix that thing. We have to come to a point in our relationships where we have to start taking responsibility. I think that men need to learn a little bit about women and to be just as transparent as they can about what their expectations are in their relationships going forward. I think women need to be just as transparent about giving realistic expectations about their needs going forward. I think if both parties can be that way, along with their boundaries and their standards, and implement their true value system, and then at the same time talking about what they will not tolerate and what they're willing to tolerate in a relationship. Now that's the adult approach. When everyone is transparent, when everyone is pretty much putting their cards on the table and letting each individual know, this is what I'm willing to give, this is what I'm not willing to give, then I think we can save a lot of this comfort that men are feeling right now and the fear that they're feeling about being disrespected. One thing I'll tell you, ladies, if you disrespect your man, I can guarantee you will be alone. Even if that man remains in the relationship, he will never love you because he can't trust you. Because respect to us is love. Respect to us is love. One thing I know from my biblical training, in the scriptures you will find that the Bible never commands a woman to love her man. Never. But the scripture does tell a woman to respect her man. Because the scripture realizes that's an area that women have a difficult time with. Scripture tells a man the scripture tells a man to love his woman. But it doesn't tell a man to respect her. Because a man is going to respect her. It's a given. Because that's what he expects. However, it's more difficult for a man to love than it is for a man to show respect. But again, respect to a man is love. So, if women want to have the kind of relationships they want, one thing they're going to have to learn how to do, even though it may be difficult, they're going to have to learn, if they want unconditional love, you have to provide unconditional respect. If you can do that, you'd be surprised what you can get from a man. I'll end on this. Respect is praise. Respect is high esteem. That's what respect is. Respect is providing honor. If you can give those things to a man, I guarantee you he'll give you his life. I'm talking about a good man. I'm talking about a real man. If you're dealing with boys, you can forget it. It's not going to happen no matter what you do, because a boy is about self-gratification. That stuff just rolls off a boy's back. So again, I hope you learned something this time. This is about a man and his fears. We're going to take up a little further on this issue going forward. Beloved, I hope I helped you. See you on the other side. God bless you.